Shabbat Shalom, good evening to the 12 tribes of the children of Israel, the children by blood of Jacob, of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Good evening, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom to those grafted in Gentiles who have received the truth of the perfect righteousness of Father Yah through Messiah, the Hebrew Messiah, the tribe of Judah. Shabbat Shalom. Greetings. And to the 144,000 among them who are being prepared for a seal and the establishment of the Messiah's kingdom soon to come. Greetings to the chat. Arkawan Banya, Brother Hines, Brother Mark, Sister Isha, and Brother Shama. Akmar, Yashayahu, Azariah Bat Israel, Superstar, and Sister Superstar. Brother Stephen Kelly, Chaplain Lewis, and all the others. Praise the Most High. Shabbat Shalom and greetings to you all. We are continuing our study of the epistle of the Apostle Paul to the Romans. And we are on chapter 10 of that epistle today. And today, there's again one of these, which we're going to continue to run into. Brother Ruah, Shabbat Shalom. These false doctrines that were being propagated through the centuries by Christianity. And because they have been propagated through centuries, they're believed as the truth. And we have been, by the grace of the Most High, able to expose them. And how? Not because we're smart or because we have some higher degree of intelligence than other human beings, but simply the Father has led us to actually read the whole book. Yes, that's it. The Father has actually led us to read the whole book. And it is an astounding fact that most people of the earth that teach this book have never read this book. That's an astounding fact. And if you're hearing me say this for the first time, allow me to explain what I mean. Generally speaking, in the Western culture especially, if someone makes a statement that they have read a book, the assumption is they began at the first chapter of the book and read through the book to the last chapter was completed. That is the generally accepted meaning when someone says, I have read a book. I started at chapter 1 and I read through till I finished all the chapters and then completed the reading of that volume. The Bible is the only book that people will have claimed to have read and yet have never done that. They have never started at Genesis and finished in Revelation. And yet, and I'm talking about teachers, I'm not even getting into all of the millions of people that claim to believe the Bible and listen to teachers that teach them from a book they've never read. And let me break it down a little further, if you will. If I had a book about your life, would you only want one of many chapters to be read and let people make judgments about your life based on reading one chapter of your book? Would you want people to make judgments of saying they understand you from reading just one chapter of a book that represented your life? And yet that's what people do with the Bible. They've never read it. And they make judgments as if they know what it's saying. Or they will read one part of it and declare what all of it says. But no, we have been blessed to expose the lies that have been taught over the centuries about this book, because the Father in heaven, the Father and God of Yahushua, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, has led us to actually read this book. And those of you that have actually read it can bear witness of all the lies you've been taught that have been generally accepted truths through the centuries. And as we have now started studying the epistle of the Apostle Paul to the Romans, as we have done with all of the volumes that we studied in this book, we use the entire Bible in gaining understanding of what we are reading. So here in Romans, I think, again, if you listen to the studies, you could bear witness. We have used Genesis and Exodus and Leviticus and Numbers and Deuteronomy. We have used Joshua and Judges. We have used all of these and many other prophets, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, as we have studied this book and this epistle of the Romans, as well, of course, as many New Testament references as well. And that help us have a clearer understanding of what the apostle was being used by the Father's Spirit to write. So here we are today in the 10th division of the epistle of Paul to the Romans. And I'd like to start with a familiar passage, that one of my favorite passages. And if you've heard me teach by the grace of the Most High through the years, you've heard me use this passage many times, this principle given to the Israelite people in the book of Deuteronomy, and for the Israelite people to share with those Gentiles that would also be grafted into the Israelite people by adoption through Messiah. You heard me read from Deuteronomy, which is the name of this is These Be the Words. That's the real name of the book of Deuteronomy. These be the words. That's the real name of it. It's Adabarim. These be the words. And it's commonly referred to as the book of Deuteronomy, one of the 5 books of Moses. And let's look at the instruction of the Father Yah to the children of Israel through Moses in this book, as we're preparing to look at also the epistle of the Apostle Paul to the Romans. And let's look at Deuteronomy chapter 4. Deuteronomy chapter 4, from verse 1 down to verse 4. Deuteronomy chapter 4, from verse 1 down to verse 4. Now, therefore, hearken, O Israel, unto the statutes and unto the judgments which I teach you, for to do them, that ye may live and go in and possess the land which Yahweh, Most High of your fathers, giveth you. Ye shall not add unto the word which I command you, neither shall ye diminish aught from it, that ye may keep the commandments of Yahweh, your Most High, which I command you. Your eyes have seen what Yahweh did because of Baal Peor. For all the men that follow Baal Peor, Yahweh thy Most High hath destroyed them from among you. But ye that did cleave unto Yahweh your Most High are alive, every one of you, this day. Key thing here is verse 2. He said, do not add to the word which Yah gave to Moses. Do not take away from his word. And the purpose of those commands was the last part, that you may keep the word. So let's look at that. Break this down very simply. So don't add to the Father Yah's word, and don't take away from his word. Why? Because if you don't add to it and you don't take away from it, you're actually keeping his word, which there's an implication. The implication is if you add to it or you take away from it, you no longer have his word. Does that make sense? So he said, Father spoke through Moses to our fathers, Israelite nation, and he's speaking to us today. And he said, don't add to my word, do not take away from my word, because then you can keep my word. And the implication again is, if I add to it or take away from it, it's no longer his word. Now, for those of you that may not know, when I speak of Yah's word, I'm talking about the King James Version of the Holy Bible. I'm not talking about the New International Version, the New American Standard Version, the New King James Version. I'm not talking about the Hallelujah Bible. I'm talking about the 1611 version of King James Authorized Version Bible. And for many reasons, I believe this is the last day word of the Most High to his people. So when I say don't add to or take away from his word, that volume is what I'm referring to. You may believe it or you don't. I'm just giving you the basis from which I'm speaking to you. After, of course, having read the book myself 19 times from cover to cover, and am now my 20th reading of it. Let's look at another witness from Moses in Exodus chapter 20. Exodus chapter 20. Exodus chapter 20. After the Most High Yah gave his covenant to Israel, and it began as we know, I am Yahweh, thy Most High, which brought thee out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. Thou, Israel, shalt have no other gods before me. The covenant was given to the people who were brought out of the land of Egypt and out of the house of bondage. It was given after that to no other people. Then during the course of that same chapter, later on in the chapter, he gives Moses instructions for the children of Israel about how to make an altar of sacrifice unto the Most High, because at that time they were given a whole ordinances of sacrificial animals for the forgiveness of sin at that time. But there's a principle when he told them about how to make an altar, a principle that goes with what we just read in Deuteronomy 4. Let's look at it. In Exodus chapter 20, I'm going to read from verse 24 and 25. Actually, 24, 25, and 26. An altar of earth thou shalt make unto me, and shalt sacrifice thereon thy burnt offerings and thy peace offerings, thy sheep and thine oxen. In all places where I record my name, I will come unto thee, and I will bless thee. And if thou wilt make me an altar of stone, thou shalt not build it of hewn stone. Hewn means cut. Don't cut the stone, he's telling them. If you make it an altar for me, don't cut the stone. Just make it just as the stone is. Why? For if thou lift up thy tool upon it, thou hast polluted it. So he's telling the children of Israel, When you go to make an altar or sacrifice where I tell you to make it, which is what he's saying here, don't cut the stone to try to make it a perfect altar, make the stones smooth. Because when you start to cut the stone, you just polluted the altar. What's the principle here? When the Father gives us something, a commandment, it's not for us to add man's words, rules, mores to the commandment, or to take away from the commandment. Because when you do that, you just polluted the commandment. Verse 26. Neither shalt thou go up by steps unto mine altar, that thy nakedness be not discovered thereon. The Bible talks about nakedness in terms of an uncovering. Adam, when he sinned, became naked because he was uncovered from the light of the Father's righteousness. The Bible warns us before Armageddon, don't walk naked, spiritually speaking, without the covering of the perfect righteousness of the Father. And so here he's saying, if you're going to worship on my altar, make sure your nakedness is not seen. Okay? So what do we have? Father's commands are not to be altered by man. Because if you alter the Father's commands, you just change the Father's commands. And you have just polluted the Father's command. There is only one way for you and me to be acceptable to the Father through the Messiah. That is through the Messiah. It is by perfect righteousness. Let's take a look at this with another witness, Psalms, and let's look at David, Psalms 119. Psalms 119. And of course, Psalms 119 is the longest Psalms in the Bible. We're not going to read the whole Psalms, but I'm going to read a section of it. Or a couple of sections, if you really notice Psalms 119, when you look at Psalms 119, what you will see is that the Psalm 119 is broken up according to each letter of the Hebrew alphabet. There's a section of Psalm 19 representing each letter of the Hebrew alphabet. Okay, all the way till you get to the end of the Hebrew alphabet. But we're going to go through three letters, or I, really, Pa, and Za. Three letters of the Hebrew alphabet as we read Psalms 119. So I'm going to start at verse 121, and I'm going to read down to verse 142. That's I, Pa, and Za. That letter I is interesting because when you look up the Messiah's name in the Hebrew concordance, that's the letter that's at the end of it, I. And it always intrigued me why they end up with a way sound or an ah sound when there's an I there. See that? Where 121, you will see that letter. That's the I sound. I. It's not way, or ooh. It's I. So that's why I always call him Yahweh Shai, because those are the two letters at the end. Just a little food for thought for y'all. Look it up for yourself. I believe it's 3092 in the Hebrew concordance, the Hebrew side of the Strong's concordance. I believe it's 3092 or 3091. When you look it up, notice that last letter. It's an I sound. But anyway, let's take a look at Psalms 119 from verse 121 to verse 142, talking about the Father's perfect and eternal righteousness. I have done judgment and justice. Leave me not to mine oppressors. Be surety for thy servant for good. Let not the proud oppress me. Mine eyes fail for thy salvation, for the word of thy righteousness. Deal with thy servant according to thy mercy, and teach me thy statutes. I am thy servant. Give me understanding that I may know thy testimonies. It is time for thee, Yahweh, to work, for they have made void thy law. Therefore, I love thy commandments above gold, yea, above fine gold. Therefore, I esteemed all thy precepts concerning all things to be right. And I hate every false way. He that cometh to Yah must believe that he is. And one of the things that show we believe that he is this word right here. I esteem all thy precepts concerning all things to be right. Thy testimonies are wonderful. Therefore doth my soul keep them. The entrance of thy words giveth light. It giveth understanding unto the simple. I opened my mouth and panted, for I longed for thy commandments. Look thou upon me and be merciful unto me, as thou used to do unto those that love thy name. Order my steps in thy word. Let not any iniquity have dominion over me. Order my steps in thy word, the word which we should not change. Order my steps in your unchangeable word. Let not the iniquity have dominion over me. Deliver me from the oppression of man, so will I keep thy precepts. Make thy face to shine upon thy servant, and teach me thy statutes. Rivers of waters run down mine eyes, because they keep not thy law. Righteous art thou, O Yahweh, and upright are thy judgments. Thy testimony that thou hast commanded are righteous and very faithful. My zeal hath consumed me, because mine enemies have forgotten thy words. Thy word is very pure, therefore thy servant loveth it. I am small and despised, yet do not I forget thy precepts. Thy righteousness is an everlasting righteousness, and thy law is the truth. Pilate asked the Messiah, what is truth? Yah's law is the truth. Messiah himself is the truth. And the Bible says his righteousness is everlasting. That means it is eternal. It is forever. Therefore, we can, of course, say, as for Yah, the Bible says, his way is perfect. So we talk about often his perfect righteousness. So let's put it all together. We're talking about not changing Yah's word, that we might be obedient to Yah's word. Yah's word is not what needs to change. It is us that needs to change. And we cannot change ourselves. His spirit changes us without permission. When we seek to change Yah's word to conform to us, we do not have his word anymore. And we have just polluted his word. Which is one of the reasons, for example, why we believe every Christian church does not belong. All of them, none of them. None of the Christian churches belong to the Most High. Why? Because he has never commanded any man to create any organization made by man. In the Bible, there is no organization made by man. There is Israel and those grafted into Israel. Israel was not made by man. Israel was made by Father Yah. His name was Jacob. And Jacob didn't go to court and say, I need to change my name to Israel. Messiah was sent to him, and Messiah said, your name is not Jacob anymore. Your name is Israel, which is Yashar Al. Yashar, to be right. Al, the Most High. To be right with the Most High. Yashar Al. And he said, you are a prince among men because you are right with the Most High. So Israel was not made by man, nor by the will of man. It was made by Father Yah. That's the only organization in the Bible. Everybody else that is in the Bible that is considered righteous is Israel, or grafted into Israel, if they're Gentiles, to the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. There is no man-made organization in the Bible. There's no Seventh-day Adventist. There's no Baptist. There's no Pentecostal. There is no Catholic Church. There is no Anglican Church. There is no Church of England. There is no Lutheran Church. There is no Church of God Seventh Day. There is no Church of God. None of that exists in the Bible. Therefore, all of them are man-made. And if they're man-made, they don't belong to the Most High. Now, there are ignorant people. I'm not saying that meanly. I was ignorant too. You were ignorant too. There are ignorant people that are in those organizations that just don't know any better. Because as we started off tonight saying, of multiple centuries of falsehood. Multiple centuries of falsehood to the point where people believe these as accepted truths because they've been around for so long. But brethren, you and I understand from this same word that we're in the last days of the history of Babylon. And as part of the seal that Yah is preparing for us to receive, he is, according to Bible prophecy, awakening us. Awakening us in our enemies' lands as to who we are and how we got here. Let me give you, please, one or two witnesses to this effect. First, let's talk Brother Moses. Moses gives us a couple of witnesses to this effect, being a prophet, not only a prophet, somebody that's alive today in the third heaven, Moses. Let's look at Deuteronomy chapter 30, where he is prophesying about us. He's prophesying about us. Deuteronomy chapter 30, from verse 1 down to verse 10. Deuteronomy chapter 30, from verse 1 to 10. This is about the awakening. And it shall come to pass when all these things are come upon thee, the blessing and the curse, which I have set before thee, and thou shalt call them to mind among all the nations whither Yahweh thy Most High hath driven thee. Thou shalt, future, call them to mind, awaken, among all the nations scattered where Most High has driven you, and shalt return. Return to what? The Christian church? To what? Islam? To what? Ashkenazim? What you supposed to return to? And thou shalt return unto Yahweh thy Most High, that brought thee out the land of Egypt, and shalt obey his voice, according to all that I command thee this day, thou and thy children, with all thy heart and with all thy soul, that then Yahweh thy Most High will turn thy captivity and have compassion upon thee, and will return and gather thee from all the nations where the Yahweh thy Most High have scattered thee. If any of thine be driven out into the outmost parts of heaven, from thence will Yahweh thy Most High gather thee, and from thence will he fetch thee. And Yahweh thy Most High will bring thee into the land which thy fathers possessed, and thou shalt possess it. And he will do thee good and multiply thee above thy fathers. And Yahweh thy Most High will circumcise thy heart and the heart of thy seed, to love Yahweh thy most high with all thy heart and with all thy soul, that thou mayest live. And Yahweh thy most high will put all these curses upon thine enemies and on them that hate thee, which persecuted thee. And thou shalt return and obey the voice of Yahweh and do all his commandments, which I command thee this day. And Yahweh thy most high will make thee plenteous in every work of thy hand, in the fruit of thy body, and in the fruit of thy cattle, and in the fruit of thy land for good. For Yahweh will again rejoice over thee for good, as he rejoiced over thy fathers, if thou shalt hearken unto the voice of Yahweh thy most high, to keep his commandments and his statutes, which are written in this book of the law. And if thou turn unto Yahweh thy most high with all thy heart, and with all thy soul. Witness number one. Let me go 1a and get Moses again, because he give this witness a couple of times. Leviticus chapter 26. Leviticus chapter 26 is Moses again, so it's the same one witness. Leviticus chapter 26. I'm going to begin at verse 37, and I'm going to read down to verse 45. And they shall fall one upon another, as it were before a sword when none pursueth. And ye shall have no power to stand before your enemies. And ye shall perish among the heathen in the land that your enemies shall eat you up. And they that are left of you shall pine away in their iniquity in your enemies' lands. And also in the iniquities of their fathers shall they pine away with them. That's generational curses. If they shall confess their iniquity and the iniquity of their fathers, with their trespass, which they trespassed against me, and that also they have walked contrary unto me, and that I also have walked contrary unto them, and have brought them into the land of their enemies, if then their uncircumcised hearts be humble, and they then accept of the punishment of their iniquity, then will I remember my covenant with Jacob, and also my covenant with Isaac, and also my covenant with Abraham will I remember, and I will remember the land. The land also shall be left of them, and shall enjoy her Sabbaths while she lieth desolate without them. And they shall accept of the punishment of their iniquity, because they despise my judgments, and because their soul abhorred my statute. Yet for all of that, when they be in the land of their enemies, I will not cast them away, neither will I abhor them to destroy them utterly, and to break my covenant with them. For I am Yahweh, their most high. But I will, for their sakes, remember the covenant of their ancestors, whom I brought forth out of the land of Egypt in the sight of the heathen, that I might be their most high. I am Yahweh. That's the 1a witness. Let's get a second witness. Let's go to Isaiah. Oh, which one? There's too many in Isaiah. But let's get a simple one in Isaiah. Isaiah chapter 11. I love this one. Isaiah chapter 11 from verse 10. From verse 10 down to verse 16. Isaiah chapter 11. I know 41. There's so many in Isaiah. There really is. This Isaiah is chock full of this witness. But for the sake of time, Isaiah chapter 11 from verse 10 to verse 16. And in that day there shall be a root of Jesse, which shall stand for an ensign of the people. To it shall the Gentiles seek, and his rest shall be glorious. And it shall come to pass in that day that Yahweh shall set his hand again, the second time, to recover the remnant of his people, which shall be left from Assyria, and from Egypt, and from Pathros, and from Cush, and from Elam, and from Shinar, and from Amath, and from the islands of the sea. And he shall set up an ensign for the nations, and shall assemble the outcasts of Israel, and gather together the dispersed of Judah from the four corners of the earth. The envy also of Ephraim shall depart, and the adversaries of Judah shall be cut off. Ephraim shall not envy Judah, and Judah shall not vex Ephraim. But they shall fly upon the shoulders of the Philistines toward the west, and they shall spoil them of the east together, and they shall lay their hand upon Edom and Moab, and the children of Ammon shall obey them. And Yahweh shall utterly destroy the tongue of the Egyptian sea. With his mighty wind shall he shake his hand over the river, and shall smite it in the seven streams, and make men go over dry shod. And there shall be a highway for the remnant of his people, which shall be left from Assyria, like it was to Israel in the day when he came up out of the land of Egypt. That's a second witness in the mouth of two or three witnesses. Let's say Jeremiah. Jeremiah is the next brother, right? The next Hebrew brother, right next to Isaiah. Jeremiah. Oh man, there's so many again. I'm gonna do this time Jeremiah chapter 31. Jeremiah chapter 31. I'm going to start at verse 1, and I'm going to go from verse 1. Oh man, I'm going to go from verse 1 to 12 because it's the number 12. Okay, so I'm going to start at Jeremiah 31. There's too many in Jeremiah, but I'm going to start at chapter 31, and I'm going to go from verse 1 to 12. Okay, are you ready? At the same time, saith Yahweh, I will be the most high of all the families of Israel, and they shall be my people. Thus saith Yahweh, the people that were left of the sword found grace in the wilderness, even Israel, when I went to cause him to rest. Yahweh hath appeared of old unto me, saying, Yea, I have loved thee with an everlasting love. Therefore, with loving kindness have I drawn thee. Again, I will build thee, and thou shalt be built, O virgin of Israel. See, he calls her a virgin. After he called her a whore, he can make her back through Messiah into a virgin. Thou shalt again be adorned with thy tabrets, and shalt go forth in the dances of them that make merry. Thou shalt yet plant vines upon the mountains of Samaria. Planters shall plant and shall eat them as common things. For there shall be a day that the watchmen upon Mount Ephraim shall cry, Arise ye, and let us go up to Zion, unto the Yahweh our most high. For thus saith Yahweh, Sing with gladness for Jacob, and shout among the chief of the nations. Publish ye, praise ye, and say, O Yahweh, save thy people, the remnant of Israel. Behold, I will bring them from the north country, and gather them from the coast of the earth, and with them the blind and the lame, and the woman with child, and her that travaileth with child together. A great company shall return thither. And they shall come with weeping, and with supplications will I lead them. And I will cause them to walk by the rivers of waters in a straight way, wherein they shall not stumble. For I am a father to Israel, and Ephraim is my firstborn. Hear the word of Yahweh, O ye nations, and declare it in the isles afar off, and say, He that scattered Israel will gather him, and keep him as a shepherd doth his flock. For Yahweh hath redeemed Jacob, and ransomed him from the hand of him that was stronger than he. Therefore shall they come and sing in the height of Zion, and shall flow together to the goodness of Yahweh, for wheat and for wine and for oil, and for the young of the flock and of the herd. And their soul shall be as a watered garden, and they shall not sorrow any more at all. And there's many, many, many more. But we just, for the sake of time, did 2 or 3 witnesses. But the awakening and the return of the true children of Israel is biblically prophesied. And so as we're reading now, Romans chapter 10, keep these things in mind as Paul is teaching the Gentiles the importance of the children of Israel and how they fell, as he already started in chapter 9. So let's go to Romans chapter 10, the 10th division of this epistle, or this letter of Paul to the Roman converts, not to Christianity. These were Roman converts in the first century to Israel and to the Messiah, who was called the Way. Romans chapter 10, beginning at verse 1. Romans chapter 10, beginning at verse 1 and going down to verse 4. Romans 10, 1 through 4. Brethren, my heart's desire and prayer to Yah for Israel is that they might be saved. For I bear them record that they have a zeal of Yah, but not according to knowledge. For they, being ignorant of Yah's righteousness, and going about to establish their own righteousness, have not submitted themselves unto the righteousness of Yah. For Messiah is the end of the law for righteousness to everyone that believeth. So we got to stop here. You know we got to stop here. I've heard Christians say that, use this verse many times. The law is done away with. See, Christ is the end of the law for righteousness. There's no more law. And if you don't understand what that word end means, you will believe that foolishness. And especially if you have not read the whole Bible. Now, we just read 3 witnesses, did we not? And Moses as a 1A, whereby we have been scattered into our enemy's land. Because why? Because we worshiped other gods and did not obey the commandments of Yah. So if you read the whole Bible, if you read the prophets, you will understand that the reason we were placed in slavery is because of our disobedience to his law. So if Yah would give a law to his chosen people that could not be obeyed, what kind of God would he be? Only to later say Messiah is putting away the law. So he puts us in slavery. And then says to the Gentiles, the law is done away with. No, that is not what it said. You see, brethren, in Old English, in the English of William Tyndale's day, in the 15th, 16th, and 17th centuries, the word end means goal. Okay? So when you look at the word end, it is synonymous with the word G-O-A-L, goal, a goal. It is a goal of mine to finish college, right? That's goal. What is, somebody will say, well, what is the end of all of this study? To finish college and graduate. That is the end of it. That is the purpose of it. A man is courting a woman and he brings her flowers every day. What is the end of you bringing these flowers to this woman? Somebody would ask. The goal is for her to be my woman. See, what is the end? What is the goal? What is the purpose? The Greek word is telos. Okay, the Greek word is telos, and it has multiple meanings, especially in the modern vernacular. But one of the meanings is what I just said, goal, purpose, which when you read it with all the prophets we just read, it makes more sense, doesn't it? Messiah is the goal of the law for righteousness. Messiah is the goal of the law for righteousness. And then we read in chapter 9, where Paul says that our bloodline brethren stumbled over Messiah. Messiah was the stumbling block. Why? He explains in chapter 10, because they left Father's perfect righteousness and added and took away from his law. Therefore, they did not have it anymore. And they went to try to establish their own righteousness. And this, brothers and sisters, every Christian church does. Because when you start off with man, you're already polluted. When you start off with man, you're already polluted. Okay? And so when you start off with man, you're already polluted. Therefore, all you can do from that point is establish your own brand of righteousness because you don't have fathers anymore. You know, when I was in the SDA church, they would make a big deal out of the righteousness by faith message at times, not all the time, at times. And when they did, some people would be so messed up that instead of calling it what the Bible calls it, justification by faith or righteousness by faith, this is what they would call it. And those of you who are Seventh-day Adventists can bear witness. What would they call it, y'all? The 1888 message. Am I lying? Why? Because they attributed it to man and they put man's tool upon it. They did not stick with the word of the Most High. And they would do that. They would have to, because it's a man-made organization. Any man-made organization will ultimately give all glory to man. And you will not be able to behold Yah's perfect righteousness. You will not be able to hang on to it. It will keep slipping out of your hand. Why? And you won't know why, because it happened to me. So I can explain it to you. The reason why is because I didn't realize I was going back to man by going back to that organization. When I left that organization, because they wanted to kick your boy out because I was too rebellious. But when I left that organization, suddenly my eyes started opening because I was no longer hindered by man. And Father himself can talk to me and show me and tell me to read his word. As I'm telling you, read his word. Because when you're reading his word and listening to his spirit, you have the opportunity to obey him. But when you're giving glory to man, you're already messed up. So our fathers created Sadducees and Pharisees. As soon as they did that, brethren, it was over. As soon as they did that, it was done. They left Yah's righteousness and went about to establish their own righteousness and did not submit themselves to Yah's righteousness. And one of the ways they didn't submit themselves was illustrated in many ways in the Messiah's life. But one way when he said, you shall know the truth, he said, and the truth shall make you free. And then they said, how sayest thou we shall be made free? We were never in bondage to any man. At that moment, Roman soldiers are walking the streets. David wasn't on no throne. Roman soldiers were walking the streets. And they said we were never in bondage to any man. They were lying to themselves. Why? Because they had established their own brand of righteousness. They were lying to themselves. Right there. They're saying we were never in bondage to any man, and Roman soldiers are walking the street. A Roman procurator, Pilate, is in charge of your city, yet you're saying we were never in bondage to any man. Y'all were taken in chains to Babylon. You were taken in chains. You were coming out of chains from Egypt. And you say we were never in bondage to any man. You see, they were self-deluded. They had left Yah's righteousness and they decided to establish their own. Therefore, you shall not add or take away from my word. That way you can what? Obey my word by establishing a Sanhedrin. They already polluted the whole thing. That is why you had two high priests. If you notice, when you read the Gospels, you have two high priests there, Annas and Caiaphas. Why do you have two? Because it was political. One was the father and one was the son-in-law. And together they ran the game that you call religion. And all you got left is religion when you don't have father's righteousness. That's all you got left is religion. And brethren, religion can't do nothing for you. Oh, yeah, you might get a little discipline, might lose a little weight, might even gain some knowledge. But you cannot have the perfect righteousness that you could only get from the Creator. Okay? Can't do it. There's only one God. He's not a title. We call him Most High. That's a title. And you can call him the Most High. That's a title. Allah is also a title. Allah means, Dios means a deity. Allah. But that's not his name. He has only shown his name to the bloodline of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He has only shown his name to the bloodline. His name is Yah. I don't care what language you speak. You can speak Japanese, Chinese, you can speak Mexican, Spanish, Italian, German, Urdu. His name is Yahweh. There's only one of him. There's not two. He's only shown himself to one people in the history of planet Earth. Only one. He has only given his covenant to one nation under the planet. He has only taught the statutes and judgments to one people, no other. He has only chosen one people. That is all according to this book. Of course, if you haven't read the book, you won't believe a word I said, and that's fine. I'm not interested in people not interested in learning the truth. Only those that want to read the book. The call is not to everybody. Remember, the revelation of Yahweh Shai Messiah. Well, let me make it plain for those that may be struggling with the things I'm saying right here. The revelation of Jesus Christ, which God or Yah gave unto him to show everybody. No. To show unto his servants. Not for everybody. To show unto his servants things which must shortly come to pass. Not for everybody. It never was for everybody. The invitation is to everybody, but the word goes out, and Messiah said to Pilate, those that are of the truth will hear my voice. He said to Pilate, I came to bear witness of the truth, and those that are of the truth will hear my voice. The Father already knows who the number is and how it's going to be made up, but he allows the choices to be made by the individual. Just because the Father already knows what choice everybody's going to make doesn't mean he forces them to make it or not make it. He seeks to save as many as he can in righteousness. But the choice is ours to make. And as long as we feel the conviction from the Spirit of the Father that we need to come to him, brothers and sisters, no matter what you've done, come to him. Go to him. Because he's calling you by his Spirit. But our fathers had a religious zeal. There's nobody more zealous on planet Earth than a religious fanatic. There's nobody more zealous. You will never meet a more zealous human being on planet Earth than a religious fanatic. And a religious fanatic is an individual that's following a man-made religious system and giving glory to man. That's a religious fanatic. And they are trying to get you to give glory to man. And you will find nobody more zealous, more willing to go to the ends of the earth than a religious fanatic. More blood has been shed on planet Earth by religious fanatics than by anything. And let me tell you, you're getting ready to see a revival of religious fanaticism. It's already starting. As we are heading to the last 10 years of this system of Babylon, you're going to see a zeal of religion. Not according to knowledge, not according to Yah's perfect righteousness, according to religious fanaticism. Man, you're going to see that. That 666. When you and I, and if you can bear witness, I'm sure you can, those of you here could bear witness. If you've received the spirit of Father's righteousness, you know very well you are humbled. And you could never give glory to man because it's supernatural. You know you don't deserve that. And you know what he's done for you. And you are thankful for what he's done for you. And you know there's no way you did it yourself. See? So when you receive the perfect righteousness of the Father, it automatically humbles you because you recognize, man didn't do this. Man didn't do this. But when you start hearing people praise the church, praise the Lord in the church, you baptize into the church, done. Done. No shot. And you're going to see more of that. The people that come to Father's righteousness will give glory to the Father. You will not force it on anybody. People, listen to me now. When you receive Father's righteousness in truth, people will see it on you. See, and people will hear things out of your mouth that you didn't even know you said. I know that sounds weird, right? Listen, in the book of Acts, the day that the 11 apostles with the 12th man they chose was on the Solomon's porch, there were more than 12 people from 12 different languages listening to them. There were multiple languages. And the apostles were speaking the word of the Most High by the power of the Holy Ghost. And everybody heard in their language the word of the Most High. And they said, how is it we're hearing in our languages the word of the Most High? Because they were hearing what Father's Spirit wanted them to hear from Father. It wasn't by man. Okay? And just the same with you and me. When we receive Father's righteousness, he will make it be seen because that's the gospel. That's the gospel. The gospel, I am not ashamed of the gospel of Messiah, for it is the power of Yah unto salvation to everyone that believe, to the Hebrew first and also to the Gentile, for therein is the righteousness of Yah revealed. That's it. Father reveals himself through those that surrender themselves to his righteousness. And people will see that. You won't have to be pushing them, begging them, dragging them to some religious service like they do, like your grandmama did to you when you went to church. You have to do that. The Father will cause his Spirit to be seen upon you. Let me show you. Isaiah chapter 60. Isaiah chapter 60. Back to brother Isaiah, Yeshaya. Let's go back to Yeshaya. Chapter 60. Isaiah chapter 60. Watch this. Isaiah chapter 60 from verse 1 down to verse 5. Watch closely now. Isaiah 60, 1 through 5. It's to this point. Arise, shine, for thy light is come, and the glory of Yahweh is risen upon thee. For behold, the darkness shall cover the earth. That's man-made fanaticism, religion. And gross darkness the people. But Yahweh shall rise upon thee, and his glory shall be seen upon thee. And the Gentiles shall come to thy light, and kings to the brightness of thy rising. Lift up thine eyes round about and see. All they gather themselves together, they come to thee. Thy sons shall come from far, and thy daughters shall be nursed at thy side. Then thou shalt see and flow together. Thy heart shall fear and be enlarged, because the abundance of the sea shall be converted unto thee. The forces of the Gentiles shall come unto thee. The sea represents the Gentiles and the nations. He said, thy light shall shine upon thee, and that's going to cause them to come to the truth. See, that's why it can never be by man. It's by Yah. But religious fanatics will try to force you, coerce you, bribe you, whatever they got to do to get you into their religion. And you're going to see a lot of that. You're already seeing it, but I'm telling you, in the next few years, you're going to see it revive and rise. And people are going to be, why don't you come to the church? Come to the Lord. The Lord loves you. Raise your hand and receive by Jesus. He loves you. Don't you want to be saved? The perfect righteousness of Father Yah is what causes us to be saved. Man gets no glory. And as we are surrendering ourselves to Father through Messiah, Yahushua, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, it says right here, it says what? It says his glory shall be seen upon thee. Father's righteousness is revealed. That is the message. The word gospel is message. That is the message of Messiah. Father's righteousness. That is his message. And his spirit is seen upon us. That's what we want. That's what we want. Okay? That's how we're covered from our nakedness. That's how we're saved. By the faith of Messiah. But as we saw in Romans chapter 10, verse 1 through 4, Christ is the goal of the law. So in other words, when you see Messiah, that's what a perfect righteous man is supposed to look like. See, let's go back there. As we finish tonight, I wanted to stop there because it's powerful enough right there. But notice verse 4. For Messiah is the goal of the law for righteousness to everyone that believeth. So Messiah is what we're supposed to be like when Father's Spirit is on us and we're obedient to his law. That's what we're supposed to look like. That's what we're supposed to act like. That's the point. That's the goal. That's the end. But our father stumbled over Messiah because he surrendered himself to death and did not come and just vanquish the Romans like they wanted him to. And even, of course, our brothers, the Messiah's disciples said, will thou at this time restore the kingdom to Israel? Because that's what everybody was waiting for. The restoration of Israelite power. But they weren't prepared in character. They weren't prepared in spirit. They were still declaring themselves not in bondage when they were. So Messiah first had to reach hearts and minds of Israelites so that we can surrender to the Father and he would get the glory. That's where we are now. That's where we are right now. Okay. And he said, this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached into all nations. That's that one. That's that one. Praise the Most High. Well, I wanted to start off with that so we understand how the brother got to the conclusion Christ is the end of the law and not that the law is done away with. Okay. We're going to continue this by the grace of the Most High on tomorrow. It is 10:17 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. We're going to continue tomorrow by the grace of the Most High, about 12 hours from now, 11:15 tomorrow a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Until then, in them 12 hours, please be safe, brethren. Be safe. Be at peace in the Shabbat, in the Father Yah. Please watch your back. Surrender to the Messiah. Be safe. Don't get no trouble today. May the Most High bless you and keep you. May he cause his face to shine upon you and your family and be gracious unto you. May he lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Shalom, fam.